Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new IDontWorkHereLady stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first story is titled, I Look Like I Work Everywhere to People and It Sucks. I love to tell my husband stories of how almost everywhere I go people at one point or another assume I work at that particular place. He laughs, but I don't think he really believes me. It has happened to me at Target, Total Wine, a car wash place, etc. 9 times out of 10 I attempted to help the person BC I am just a nice person, and most of the time it ends with me pointing in the general direction of their inquiry and off they go. Then there is always that one person who can never be satisfied, or I just am burnt out on being nice and wish for as little human interaction as possible. My husband got to witness the latter at this last encounter. We were at the grocery store with the kids, this was pre-COVID, and I was wearing a black t-shirt and some jeans. Nothing fancy. Nothing like the uniforms people at this store wear. I was reaching into a cooler door to get some yogurt when a feeler tapped on my shoulder. Turning around, I am greeted with by a middle-aged woman. I need to know where the hamburger buns are. I take a sigh and kinda of roll my eyes. Yes. I know where the bread aisle is, but I just don't have it in me to be helpful after a long week of work. I politely tell her I don't know and turn back around to finish getting my yogurt. I get it, step around her and walk towards my cart full of food stuff, children and my husband who is watching this interaction. This was not the end of it. I am about halfway there and the lady grabs my shoulder this time. If you don't know, you need to find someone who does, and she keeps going. I make eye contact with my husband and give him a "I ducking told you so" look and walk over to my cart to place my yogurt next to my daughter, who loudly asks me why that lady is talking to me. The lady has a look on her face. I think she knows I don't work there, but she can't back down to admit she was wrong. Well, I know you are here with your family, but I know you work here, so you have to help me. My daughter is now super confused. Mommy, why does that lady think you work here? I just start pushing my cart down another aisle, leaving the lady stammering about talking to the manager, etc. My husband is laughing his ass off, talking about how angry that woman looked. BC I wasn't helping her. So I thought it was done. Nope. We are checking out and bagging up our groceries and here she comes. In all of her pissed off glory, with a poor haggard looking manager in tow. She stops in front of our cart and points to me. This is your lazy employee that refuses to help me. The manager looks at her and looks at me, having no f***ing clue who I am. My kids are starting to ask more questions and my husband is no use whatsoever, as he is now doubled with laughter. He snorted. Ass. The manager starts apologizing to me and asks if I need any help getting my stuff to our car. I decline but thank him. He then turns to the lady and tells her she is mistaken, that I am not, nor have I never been an employee of that store, and she should leave me alone. The lady is livid. Her plate clearly gone wrong. And mumbles something about how she knows I work there and she is going to call corporate as we pass her. I might have told her to have a nice day as we left with a SHT eating grinning on my face. My daughter told her she was weird. I never saw her again at that store. The next story is titled, Karen Demands Attention from a Camp Counselor at a Grocery Store. I, 17F, work as a summer camp counselor. Our uniform is essentially a t-shirt with the town logo on the front and staff written in big letters on the back, new color every year, so I own yellow, green, lime green, and red, and whatever shorts, leggings we feel comfortable in. It's a pretty casual job, so the day in question I was wearing the oversized yellow shirt and denim shorts. After camp, my mum and I decided to stop at the grocery store down the street to pick up a few things. She went ahead into the store while I browsed around a clothing store a few doors down. When I was done, I headed into the grocery store, on the phone with my mum in an attempt to find her. I walk through the first set of doors into a small foyer where I pass a woman in her mid-60s getting a cart that I didn't think much of. As I passed through the second set of doors into the main area of the store, I vaguely registered the woman shouting, "Stop! Stop!" I said stop right now, in the direction of someone who I assumed to be her shopping companion. I was still on the phone at this point, about to hang up, when the woman cuts directly in front of me, her face twisted into the most Karen-like snarl I had ever seen despite the mask. "I was talking to you," she rudely says, as I, taken aback, hang up the phone and take a few steps away from her. I blink, very confused, and make a stammered attempt at an apology. She cuts me off, saying, employees should be required to pay constant attention to paying customers such as myself. Still confused, I say, oh, I don't work here. Sorry, and try to step around her. She shifts her body, blocking me. Yes, you do, she says, and I can hear just how pathetically condescending this conversation will be. No, I don't, I say, attempting again to sidestep her. She blocks me again, saying, yes, you do. Your shirt says staff, that means you work here. At this point it's important to mention that employees of this grocery store do have a uniform, although it was nothing like what I had on. Staff members wore black polos with the store logo on the breast pocket, and khaki pants with black sneakers. I, in my shorts and neon t-shirt with no name tag and electrically hued hair, looked absolutely nothing like those employed by the grocery store. Recognizing her confusion but not understanding it in the slightest, I say, oh yeah, no, I don't work here. Sorry. This seems to make her even more angry. Yes, you do. You do work here. I know you do. Stop lying and help me. I dodge her and run over to where my mother was watching the entire interaction from behind a display case, and we watch as Karen calls out for me to come back, her voice shrill with outrage, unable to comprehend that she was foiled by a teenage minimum wage worker. The next story is titled, Mum Mistakes Me for a Nanny. This was about 12 years ago when I was fresh out of grad school and still had energy to volunteer. I am an Asian woman and was in my 20s at the time. This comes into play later. I was helping to plan a silent auction for a giant fundraiser in NYC, which requires a lot of coordination between the donors, deliveries, storage, etc. A friend's family own a large wine import business and offered 6 extremely nice bottles of wine for our auction. I lived on the Upper East Side of NYC at the time, which is chock full of wealthy families with children, and in turn a lot of nannies raising said children. The marketing person at the wine company lived just a block away from me, and I told her I would pop by at a specific time after work instead of arranging a messenger service and waiting around. I got to the building, the doorman rang up to let her know I was there and sent me up to the apartment. As I got close to the door I heard children screaming, as they do. I rang the doorbell and the marketing lady opened the door, smiled, and said, "Oh, where's Michael?" I said, "Who is Michael?" "I'm Op. I'm here to pick up the wine for the fundraiser." She turned red because she realized that. She thought because I was Asian that I was Michael's nanny and there for the playdate with her gremlin, despite the fact I was dressed in business casual clothes and without a child in tow. She thinks all Asian people look the same. She had met Michael's Asian nanny in the past and thought we were doppelgangers. I made it as uncomfortable as possible for her while she tried to make small talk about the fundraiser. I never mentioned it to my friend, but I hope marketing lady still thinks about it and cringes every now and then. The next story is titled, Me vs the Harpy of the Aisles. So I get asked for help quite often while doing my grocery shopping if I stop by after work. It doesn't matter which grocery store except for Aldi's. At this point, I am kind of used to it, and honestly, most folks are rather polite and nice about the mix-up. But sadly that is not always true. It is almost always while I am cruising an aisle eyeballing the shelves for what I want or might want, and one of my fellow shoppers asks me for help. Now most of them apologize and are polite about it. If I know the store I am at the time, I will actually help them or help them find an employee. If they are rude I typically just ignore them and go about my business, and they cart off in a huff. Like some of you, I have had folks get irate with me, but only once, to an extent where I had to explain to a floor manager what was going on after they tried to berate me for being rude and wound up talking to the store's manager, who let them both know they were being stupid. This stems from my work uniforms. I work for a guard company and a lot of their uniform shirts are grey. I have only had this start happening when they started to switch to using our newer polo-style shirts, which only have a small logo over the left half of the chest. The old uniforms had a large visible patch on the left shirt sleeves. The ensemble is completed with my charcoal grey work trousers, and my black work shoes. Apparently quite a few folks think I look like some sort of manager and stop me to ask for help. For me, this usually happens at Hy-Vee. The worst was an occasion where both a random Karen and a junior manager both thought I worked there. It started out like most of my post-work shopping trips. I am cruising down the aisles looking for what I want for a few meals. I have a big obvious shopping cart, my personal coat tucked over the bars, and am occasionally selecting items to put into my cart. I have no obvious or overt grocery store equipment in my cart or on my person. I am at it for about 20 minutes, and while I am cruising down the pasta and rice aisle, I feel someone staring at me rather intensely and notice a random woman standing at the end of the aisle glaring at me, tapping her foot with her arms crossed. I am at least 30 feet away, there is ample room to go by me, and I have not encountered her before. I don't really look at her again until I notice her move up the aisle a bit out of the corner of my eye and tapping her foot louder and making that obnoxious ahem noise that makes you want to box their ears to teach them some manners. I made the mistake of making eye contact while looking over and looking confused. At that point, she stomped up to me and stood there, hands on hips, trying to glare me down. She is starting to creep into my personal bubble, and I am not fond of strangers invading my personal space at random, so I step behind my cart to put something between her and me. This apparently only makes things worse. Her death glare intensifies, and I can tell she is working up to a shrieking fit with huge eyes, flared nostrils, and even foot stamping. I decided I didn't want to imitate a Grecian hero and fight off an angry harpy and moved to swing my cart around and go somewhere else. She grabs my cart before I can get turned around and forcing me to confront her. Normally I would keep my cool and talk my way out of it. But I am exhausted from a 12-hour shift and dealing with my own personal workplace problems, like trying to train a new technophobe guard who literally got lost walking in a straight line. My temper is slightly frayed and my mental and emotional energies are at a low ebb. I let a bit of my temper leak out. I told her to let go of my damn cart, get out of my way, leave me alone, and go bother someone else. I yank my cart free briefly before she grabs it again and begins the show. She literally shrieks and then starts screaming how I have to help her, it is my job, and she will go get a manager if I don't apologize and do what she says. I tell her I don't work there and I don't have to do squat and to get lost. She shoves my cart at me and storms off hollering about how she will get a manager. With her gone, I make good on my opportunity to escape to continue shopping. I was figuring that the supervisor would search for an errant employee and would not find any among their own to be at fault, and it would become a moot point. I was apparently sorely mistaken. Another 10 minutes into my shopping excursion and the Karen storms up the aisle and a junior manager in tow. She is looking vindictive and triumphant, and the junior manager is looking annoyed and already glaring daggers at me. I roll my eyes as they walk up, as I know what is going to happen. The Karen then proceeds to holler at volume how I wouldn't help her and how I was rude and should be punished or fired. I just start shaking my head. I have seen this guy before, and I shopped at the store on a regular basis because it was on my way home from work. I figured he would recognize me and tell the lady to leave me alone. Instead, the little crap proceeds to dress me down and berate me for not helping a customer, and that I would get a negative review on my performance evaluation and that I would have to clock out and go home. Needless to say, my temper was climbing rapidly, and I was honestly seriously considering giving him an earful of what my drill instructors called colorful euphemisms of encouragement for performance. I stared for a minute with my best "you are both ducking idiots" look. I am not wearing any uniform like anyone else in the store. I have a name badge, with my picture, name, and company I am currently contracted to as a guard. I look nothing like anyone in the store. An event lanyard my ID is on has the company name on it and is a different color than the ones they use. I looked at both of them square in the eyes each and said, "No. I don't owe either of you jack crap. I don't take orders from people I don't work for, and certainly not some random obnoxious woman harassing me while I shop. I am managing to keep myself mostly in check rather than lighting them up, but I know that won't do me any good." The Karen stares open-mouthed, her gaping maw like a hideous drowning deep-sea fish pulled from the slimy depths' vacant buggy eyeballs. The junior manager looks positively stunned and starts getting red in the face. I can tell he is about to unload, and the Karen is looking pretty smug with herself. I know they are likely going to double-team me if I don't cut them off. Before he can do his impression of Mount Vesuvius and bury us all in the ash of his blind stupidity, I cut off his brewing tirade. I tell him to look at my uniform. Look closely. I asked him if anyone in Hy-Vee wears grey polyester polos with my company's name on the chest. He looks briefly stunned for a moment. I then ask him if he has ever seen me working there before. I can see the volcano that was building has gone foot and the hamster is starting to crank up the wheel. I then showed him my ID badge and asked if this looked like it said Hy-Vee anywhere on it. His bubble of confusion pops and he has clearly realized he has made a mistake. Instead of apologizing, telling the Karen to leave me alone, he doubles down on the stupid. He proceeds to scold me for not being helpful and demanding that I apparently do his job for him. I explain I don't have to, especially when someone is being rude and harassing me while I am shopping, and especially when he is responsible for helping customers and not me. He didn't like me telling him he could have just as easily helped her, sent her on her way, and then come to find whoever was causing the problem rather than creating a public scene. I am about to head for the customer service counter, find the store manager, and get the bozos to leave me alone when I spot said store manager cruising down the aisle because someone had told him someone was yelling and causing a commotion. I didn't know this until after this had been resolved, so I waved him over and trying to not let my anger leak out too much more. This guy knows me on site as I showed DUP often enough, and I sometimes chatted with the staff while shopping. He greets me politely and asks what he could help me with. I then point out the Karen and his idiot employee and explain how they are both harassing me. He puts up the stop hand until I am done to cut him off from interrupting. He gets this fairly annoyed look and turns to his wayward junior and tells him to go wait in his office. He then tells the Karen to leave the store because she has harassed other customers before. She tried to bicker and argue, but he cut her off and wouldn't let her lay any of her bad behavior on anyone but herself. He had to threaten her with the cops before she left. He apologized and I said it was no big deal, and he walked with me to check out and made sure the Karen wasn't lingering and had indeed left. She was apparently banned from all local Hy-Vees for 2 months for her bad behavior. I came by next week and the store manager found me while I was shopping and explained that the employee had been promoted to a junior manager at the company's request but had been screwing up by the numbers. He apologized for the mess, but I was cool with it. No harm, no foul. Junior screw-up was suspended that night and then fired the next week. Apparently, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. I still shopped there because aside from one-off incident most of my trips went well. The next story is titled, The Most Underwhelming UDWHL Story of All Time. I'm an EMT. We wear the typical medic uniform with a navy blue button-down shirt, black slacks, and a badge. It looks like a police uniform with no weapons. I was on break and buying lunch at a grocery store when an elderly lady approached me and asked if I knew where something was. I told her, sorry, but I don't work here. She asked why I was wearing a uniform and I told her that I'm an EMT. She said, oh, you work on the ambulance. Sorry, I thought you were a security guard. I told her it wasn't a problem, and I pointed her in the direction of an actual security guard. Then I left. Totally wasn't a big deal. It actually happens all the time. The next story is titled, COVID Checks, Squatters, and Communists. So I work in a NOC for business internet. My job is to take calls, fix issues, blah blah blah. Well, today I get back from my break and receive a call. I answer the phone, ready to open a ticket for a customer. But instead, I'm met with confusion. The caller asks if I work for a different, I assume news, company. I reiterate no, I work for an interest company. He asks for the number for the company he's trying to call. I don't know the number. He then starts getting angry, asking if I know certain people I don't, and going off about squatters and COVID checks, turning things towards communism. Going on and on about how things are devolving into communism and cussing up a storm. Again I politely but firmly tell him he has the wrong number. He again starts cussing and yelling. I hang up. I get a call not moments after I hang up. It's the same guy. He's pissed I hung up on him. He keeps yelling at me and cussing, asking if I knew so and so from CBS or whoever else. I say no, tell him one last time he has the wrong number, and hang up. He calls one last time and I don't even pick up. I have no idea what this guy was going on about or why he thought I worked for some news company. The next story is titled, I drive a truck, so I work for you. So this happened today. I have a handful of clients in a very expensive but not gated neighborhood and drive around in it every week for maintenance work. This situation actually occurred 2 blocks from the late Steve Jobs' house. For some context, I drive an unmarked newish model white Tundra with a lumber rack. So I obviously am driving a work truck. So I am in a hurry as always, trying to keep on schedule, and this younger Karen, YK, leaps out into the road with frantic eyes and her arms waving in the air, so I stop my truck assuming I have just come across some terrible emergency situation. So even though there is a pandemic on, I lower my passenger side window so she can tell me what is happening. I wouldn't have if she wasn't masked. YK, do you have room in your truck? My truck bed is completely empty, but I suspect she means inside for passengers. I never clarified. Me, what? Is everything okay? At this point I notice the young man with her won't look at me. YK, I need your help to move my couch to another house 2 blocks away. Me, have to admit that as a friendly helpful guy the first was tempted to be like, sure, let's knock it out. Then I remembered, frick no, this is bullcrap, I am busy, I don't know you, there is a pandemic. YK, it isn't that far now, scowling. Me, well, glad to know everything is okay, maybe stay out of the road, I am working right now so I will be on my way. Leave, her jaw dropped, standing in the road. Perhaps not the wildest story, but it is a shock what some people think is acceptable. I have more stories of Karens breaking traffic laws to demand things of me. For some reason, while this never happened historically, it keeps happening in the pandemic. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comment.